Hello, and welcome to Travel with Austin. I'm Austin, and today we will be talking about a very important and tragic event. The worst mine disaster in Ohio history, the Millfield Mine Disaster. Owned by the Sunday Creek Coal Company, the mine we commonly call the Millfield Mine was simply known as the Sunday Creek Coal Mine No. 6. But the mine was the biggest business in the town of Millfield, and most of their 1,500 residents were employed by the mine or related to someone who was. The day of November 5th, 1930, had already started as a day with much commotion and intrigue, as joining the miners that day was the president and vice president of the company, along with some other executives who had come to the mine, ironically, to show off the new safety equipment there. Now, along with the executives, around 190 miners made their ways into the mine that morning. At first, the day went smoothly, and everything was running perfectly, and the executives were very pleased. Then, at 11:45 a.m., without any warning, it happened. An explosion rocked the mine, which was felt from miles away. It is believed that the explosion was created due to a spark between a trolley and the rails of an area of the mine known to accumulate methane gas, but this area had been shut off for a while now. The explosion rocked through the mine, knocking many over. It is believed that actually only a handful of people died in the initial blast, and many, although seriously injured, were able to escape the mine through ventilation shafts or air intakes for the mine. But sadly, the deaths were just beginning. You see, the ignition of the methane gas had spread carbon monoxide through the mine, and most of those still trapped underground would die of asphyxiation. During this time, many heroes would emerge as distress calls were sent out across the country. Rescue crews came from all over. The Red Cross and Salvation Army sent out teams, the National Guard was called in, and the Chief Inspector of the U.S. Bureau of Mines showed up. All of these people were heroes doing their best to save any survivors. But one name tends to be called out more often than others: John Dean. John was a foreman in the mines and led many to safety behind a partition that helped keep them safe from the deadly gas. He made several trips into the gas-filled area to rescue fellow miners until he himself collapsed and had to be rescued. John and all the men he rescued were found nearly 3 miles away from the entrance to the mine, next to a ventilation staff. Almost all of them were unconscious, but due to John's efforts, they all lived. His efforts saved all of their lives. It took until the following day to recover all the bodies. Areas in town had to be transformed into makeshift morgues. In the end, 82 people had died, including all of the executives. Given the population of the small town of Millfield, this disaster had drastic effects. 59 women became widows, and 154 children lost a parent. A man named Sigmund Koza was the last remaining survivor of the mine disaster, only being 16 when it had occurred. Koza lived until 2009 before passing away in his 90s. Millfield Mine Disaster remains Ohio's worst mine disaster to this day and still greatly affects the communities of Southeast Ohio. If one gleam of hope, or if one silver line could be taken from this tragedy, it is that in the next year, in 1931, Ohio imposed better safety regulations in its mines to ensure that nothing like this would ever happen again, and that is the tragic and very important story of the Millfield Mine Disaster.